So we are doing the respiratory system today, and I will be focusing as usual on the basics, the most important parts of this system. And generally speaking, as we all know, the respiratory system is responsible for gaining oxygen and getting rid of carbon dioxide. And we talked about that in the previous system, cardiovascular system or circulatory system, where the blood go from the right ventricle to the pulmonary trunk to the lung, deoxygenated, and it go through the lung, get rid of carbon dioxide and get oxygen from the air, and then return back from the pulmonary veins into the left atrium, and then left ventricle, and then to the aorta, and then to the rest of the body, going all the way to the cells loaded with oxygen. And then the cells are going to take the oxygen from the capillaries, and it will release carbon dioxide that will go back to the other side of the capillaries and then go through the venules and veins and return back to the heart and so on. So the respiratory system will start from the nasal cavities, the nose here and the nasal cavities. Underneath that, there will be this part which is called the pharynx. And this pharynx is basically three parts. The first part right here is behind the nose. We call it nasopharynx. Then the second one is behind the oral cavity, oropharynx. And the next one is behind this part here, which is called the larynx, and we call it the laryngopharynx. So when we breathe, the air enters through the nose, go to the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and then it go to this, which is called the larynx. After the larynx, which is this top part right here, this is called the trachea or the wine. The larynx is also called the voice box. Uh, the trachea, which is this one right here, this wide tube here, this is called the wind tube. This will divide in a tree fashion, looks like a tree, like two big branches, and then branches, 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 until it go to the smallest of all, which are the alveoli, like these, in which the air exchange or the gas exchange is going to occur. So this sequence is important to know. Like I can ask you like this, which of the following is the correct sequence? So it is the nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi or bronchial tree until it goes all the way to the alveoli. So this is something that you need to know. And this picture is a very important picture to know. And again, these are the basics. So we can show you something like this. And um, two ways we can ask you. We can ask you like, what is this and what is that? This is one way. Or the other way is as you see here, what you see here in these boxes. So this slide specifically is very, very important. So do we have to ask you like, what is this? And you say the nose? No, we don't have to. We can say, what is this? And your answer is the nose. Or we can ask you, or the nasal cavity, or we can ask you, this is what filters, warms, and moisten the air, which is a function of the nose. And this is why, if you think about it, okay, should I breathe through my nose or should I breathe through my mouth? You should breathe through your nose, not your mouth. Why? Because specifically the nose is equipped with different things that will make sure that the air that's moving in, because the inside of the lung at the end, the alveoli, is very delicate. So you need to make sure that the air is going is healthy and good air. And what I mean by healthy and good air, it means clean or filtered. And this is going to happen because of the nose, because of the hair that we have in the entrance of the nose that will trap things. And then it will, when the air goes in, there is a mucus membrane that contain mucus secretion that will trap different things as well. There will be also cilia that will push out anything that goes in. Besides, the amount of blood vessels inside will make sure the air is warm. So this is something that's very important to remember, because we can ask you in different ways. We can ask you about it in a picture like this. What is this? This is the nose. Or which one of those is filter and warm and moist the air? It's the nasal cavity. Or which of the without pictures, can be without pictures. Which of the following are the functions of the nose or the nasal cavity? So the perfect air is filtered, warm, moist. Each one of those is important, which is not the case if you breathe through your mouth. So when to breathe through your mouth, you're not supposed to, but if your nose is completely blocked, you have to breathe. Yes, this is just something temporary, just in case, but this is not normal. The normal is your nose. Next part is called the pharynx, and this is a passageway, basically. And this passageway is both for air coming from the nasal cavity and from the food coming from the oral cavity. Look at this, both of them will go to this. So this is a common passageway for both air and food. Then you have two ways to go through. You can go in the back here to the laryngo pharynx, but this is for the food and drink. But for the air, it will go to the front here, going to the larynx. How to make sure that the food goes here in the back to the laryngopharynx, followed by the esophagus, stomach, rest of the digestive system, not to the air pipe right here, or how, and on the other hand, how to make sure that the air goes in the front here to the larynx, trachea, bronchi, and doesn't go backward. How to make sure? Yes, there is this gate that we call it the epiglottis. This is a very important, something like a gate. So if you are swallowing, you're going to close the entrance to the larynx, to the air. So if you're eating food, drink, this entrance will be closed by the epiglottis. Versus if you are breathing and not eating or drinking, it will open and the air will go in this. So this is your gate to determine um, what goes in the front or in the back. It depends on food, drink, or air. So the epiglottis open if it is just air. Anything else, it will close because nothing is supposed to go to the larynx except for air. Or if you are speaking, these are the only two options for this gate to open, which is the epiglottis. Epiglottis, epi, is a prefix that means above or on top of. So epiglottis is what's above the glottis. So it means there is something called glottis. What's the glottis? The glottis is this part right here. If you can see this slit right here, just this little, not the larynx, just this part right here. This is called the glottis, which is basically the space between vocal cords. There are cords here. Look at the slit. Um, Underneath the slit, there are cords or folds, and these are called the vocal cords or folds. And these are the ones that can open and close and stretch and unstretch to make the sound. Since this is located inside the larynx, so this whole thing here is the larynx, so we call the larynx the voice box because obviously it produces voice, which is sound. This is followed by the trachea. The trachea is a long, wide tube that we call it the windpipe, and the names here are important, not just trachea. It's also known as windpipe. You need to remember this. This is larynx, also known as voice box. We need to know both of them. So what is this trachea? It's just a tube that will deliver the air down from the larynx until it splits into the bronchi, primary bronchi. And in order to make sure that this tube is always opened, there are C-shaped cartilage. You know, cartilage is something like this, or like your front of the nose. This is cartilage. So there is cartilage in the form of C shape. Look at all of these, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way. All of these are not complete circles. It is C shape, like open circles. And this is to strengthen the trachea and make sure it's always opened. And the reason why it's a C shaped, because the back there is a flat muscle and membrane to allow the expansion behind it, which is the esophagus behind it here. I will show you more pictures. But because this picture is, I would say this is the most important slide because of all this information in it. So that's why I'm spending more time. So after the trachea, you are going, the trachea will split into two primary bronchi, also contain cartilage, but it's circles, not C-shaped. Also just to keep it open. And then the primary bronchi are going to split into secondary bronchi and tertiary bronchi. And then look at this, bronchioles. So bronchi, primary, secondary, or tertiary, it will further divide into bronchioles. Like if you look at the tree, you will see trunk and like two main branches, and then branches, branches, branches. And toward the end, you will see like tiny branches. This is like the bronchioles of different types. And at the end, if you look like an apple tree, it's going to branch, 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 until all the way at the end, you will see like a stem like this and an apple attached to it. This is exactly what we have in our lung. So this stem at the end in which the apple is attached, this is called the alveolar duct, and the apple is the alveolus, which is a spherical structure with a very thin membrane in which the gas exchange will occur. Um, Separating the chest cavity, this chest cavity here, from the underneath uh, abdominal cavity, there is this muscular structure called the diaphragm. This diaphragm, look how it is convex shaped like this. When it contracts, it will be flat. So it will make the space of the lung here wider so that we can breathe in. So it moves in when we inhale. This is what I just talked about. Can our lung freeze? No. Why? Because you're breathing through your nose. The air going in is filtered, warm, and moist. So by the time it goes in throughout all what we talked about, from the nose to the pharynx, to the larynx, to the trachea, to the bronchi, to the bronchioles, to the alveolar duct, to the alveoli, the air that reached the alveoli at the end is actually warm, and it's very delicate. Otherwise, if that's not the case, it can actually freeze, but it doesn't freeze because of this. So I mentioned in that picture the larynx in which we have the glottis, and the glottis is those two vocal folds or colds, vocal fold or vocal cords. Look at those two. You can open it so that air can move in. and you can close it, and you can stretch it and unstretch it in order to produce a sound. So these vocal cords are what produce the sound, and that's why being in the larynx, we call the larynx the voice box. This is an actual picture, like they are using endoscopy um, or laryngoscope, something called laryngoscope, in order to look inside and look. This is obviously the glottis is opened. Look at the two vocal cords moving away from each other. It's opened. Now you can talk, you can sing, and each one of those, like here is one, and here is one, they can stretch, unstretch to produce the sound. The trachea, I already talked about it, the windpipe, and it will split into bronchi. It contains C rings or cartilaginous rings that you need to remember. And it just take the air down until it's split into the bronchi. If you look at this cut picture, uh, this is not something that we can ask you about. If we want to ask you, we ask you about the basics, like this. Like any part of this, we can ask you about it, either what is this or what does it do. But this is just to show you that this is actually C-shaped ring. It is incomplete circle. Look here, there is no cartilage because the cartilage is kind of rigid in order to keep this opened. But here in the back, there is muscle. And this muscle will complete the circle, but it's not rigid, so the esophagus behind it can expand if you're eating. Within the airways that we are talking about, I told you the air should be filtered, moist, and warm. So how is it filtered and moist? Because we have these mucus secreting cells and cilia that are going to secrete mucus. The mucus is, you know, when you like every now and then we can spit out something, we can spit this mucus that contain trapping the dust and the pathogens. So these cells secrete, it's called the mucus secreting cells. They secrete mucus, which is this viscous secretion that's inside our respiratory airways, so that anything that goes in, it will be trapped. Not only that, but we also have these, look at these finger-like projections, cilia, that will push out anything that's going in other than the air. It should be the air only. This will be followed by bronchi splitting right and left, and then the bronchi will become bronchioles. And look at the end, alveolar duct and alveolus. The alveolus is at the end like the apple. And this alveolus have a very thin wall so that the oxygen crosses and goes in to the blood, and carbon dioxide also cross it, but the opposite way. They leave the blood and goes into this space in the alveolus, and then it will go through the alveolar duct and the bronchioles, bronchi, until it goes here, trachea, larynx, pharynx, nose, and the other way around. This is air moving in and out. Around the alveoli, look at these all alveoli, there are blood vessels that are coming from the heart. Remember when we talked about the heart, we said right uh, that deoxygenated blood collects in the right atrium. I hope you guys still remember that. Deoxygenated blood collect in the right atrium from superior inferior vena cava. It moves to the right ventricle, pulmonary artery, going to the lung. These are the branches of the pulmonary artery. Remember when we talked about the three arteries, arterioles, capillaries, and the other way, the other side of the capillaries, venules, veins? We talked about that several times. So hopefully you guys still remember that. So here it is. Look at this blue. This is coming from the pulmonary artery, arteriole, and these capillaries. And these capillaries surrounding the alveolus from the other side as well. So as it is moving like this, carbon dioxide leave, go to the alveolar cavity, and oxygen moves to the capillaries. Carbon dioxide move to the alveolar space, and oxygen move to the capillaries. And that will happen a lot until you end going to the other side. Now it is oxygenated. From the capillaries, it will go to the other side, venules and veins, and then pulmonary veins will go back to the left atrium. Then it will move from the left atrium to the left ventricle to the aorta, go to the rest of the body, to the different cells, giving them the oxygen. This is how it looks like. This is the whole thing here is called alveolar sac, and each one of those alveoli is surrounded by capillaries, pulmonary capillaries. And here it is. This is even a smaller picture. You don't have to know the details. Just know that the blood can be oxygenated in one side of the capillaries. As it is moving, carbon dioxide leave it, go to the air or the cavity of the alveoli, and oxygen moves in exchange of the carbon dioxide. And this will happen. Look, it's blue, become purple because oxygen moving in. The more oxygen you gain, the red colored it is. The red color start to come with the oxygen. So carbon dioxide leave the capillaries, go to the alveolar space. Oxygen leave the alveolar space, go to the capillaries. And it happen all the time until you end up in the other side that it is red because it contains a lot of oxygen and carbon dioxide already go to the space, and then when you breathe out, it's going to leave the body. Now, something here that we need to know, which is called the pulmonary surfactant. The pulmonary surfactant is, look at this here. If you ever wonder, like, what keep this opened? Like before that, we talked about the cartilage, keeping the trachea and the bronchi opened. It doesn't collapse, doesn't close because of this rigid cartilage. What make these very tiny, thin alveoli, what keep it opened like this? Why it doesn't collapse? Because this wall of the alveoli secretes something called surfactant that you need to remember. Surfactant. It releases surfactant. And this surfactant decreases surface tension of these alveoli so it does not collapse. So this word here, pulmonary surfactant, it's a secretion that lower or reduce surface tension. Pulmonary surfactant, surface tension, reduce surface tension. Surfactant, reduce surface tension. So when the surface tension reduce, this is not going to collapse. If the surface tension increase, surface tension is this wall pushing in. If the surface tension increase, this wall will collapse, and the lung is not going to do the exchange, and this person can actually die. And this is what we call it infant respiratory distress syndrome. If you ever heard about this, you don't have to know it. Just in case if you're interested to know, out of curiosity, they don't have enough surfactant. So these alveoli collapse. They do not do exchange. They don't get rid of the carbon dioxide enough. They don't get enough oxygen. They get this distress that if it's not taken care of, they can actually die. Of course, it doesn't mean they are going to die. What happened here is if this is like premature, again, this is just for your information. This is too much for this course. Just if you're interested. If somebody is, if this baby is born premature, maturity is at 9. At 7, it's okay. They do have the surfactant. But before 7, no. Before 7 months, Like if this baby is born at 6 months, he's going to survive. Yes, but he doesn't have enough surfactants, meaning he will have a respiratory distress. So his lung can collapse. They do not allow that to happen, just for your information. They take them right away to the incubators, and there are machines to keep these spaces opened until he finished producing his surfactant. Now, when we breathe in inspiration or inhalation, and then you breathe out exhalation or expiration. How that happen? In, out. Obviously, there are muscles that work to do that. The muscles work, contract, and then let go. So what are these muscles that contract when we inhale? Look at these ribs. And we talked about the bone before, if you remember. In between the ribs, there are muscles called intercostal. Same rule that I'm always using since we started. And this is a very helpful way to understand rather than memorizing things that you don't understand. Because next course, if you're taking something like BIO111, or even if you go more advanced, you are using the same terms. And that's why I keep on putting some time in these terms, because the medical terminology is nothing but accumulations and adding up prefixes and suffixes. It's not English. Greek and Latin is not English. It's not every word is separate. No, it's prefixes and suffixes. You put them together, you can make up the meaning, literally. So enter means in between. Costal means ribs. So intercostal muscles are the muscles in between the ribs. These. There are some of them outside, external, and others are inside. When they contract, the ribs are going to move so that you can breathe. So it's in between the ribs to move the ribs so you can breathe. There is also this diaphragm is one of the respiratory muscles. When it contract, look at this if you can see my hand. When it contract, it push down like this to be flat. Look, it goes like this. So, so that the space up here increase. Look, if this is instead of being curved like this, if it's flat at the bottom here, you're adding this area here. So this become bigger. When it become bigger, the area become bigger, the air moves in. So the two, obviously, we have two lungs, one on either side of the heart. These are the main components, plus the other parts. What you do, you take oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. Nasal cavities, one more time, filters, warms, and moisten the incoming air. And this is the healthy, the perfect air. Warm, moist, filtered. What is referred to as voice box? Larynx. Larynx, why did you call it voice box? Because they contain what cords? Vocal cords. What's the function of the vocal cords? Produce sound. And that's why, or voice. That's why we call the larynx containing the vocal cords. We call it the voice box. The tiny what are the site of exchange? Alveoli. We exchange through what? Alveoli. These tiny structures with the thin membrane is where we do the exchange, and it produces surfactant. This picture is, again, the same one that we used before, but there are two of those. So if I'm you, I would label it. Like I look at it here first, read it several times, and then go to this and write down this. Literally memorize it. Very, very important. Not only that most likely you will see this picture, but also it contains a lot of information that will help you with other questions. So I can say this picture is like 8, 9 questions in one slide because it contains all these information uh, summarized. So now when we say respiration, we mean gas exchange. You get oxygen, you get rid of carbon dioxide. And this is divided into two parts, and you need to know this because, again, basics. When you breathe in, air moves in your nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, lung, all the way until it go to the alveoli. Oxygen moves into the blood, and the blood take it to the cells. All what I said so far is called external respiration. External respiration, because this is the external gas exchange. Oxygen moved in, go to the blood and go to the cells, and through the same wall, carbon dioxide leaves out. So this part from the respiratory system until you go all the way to the cells, this is called external respiration. Now, oxygen is at the level of the cells in the capillaries. Remember, we talked about that part of in the circulatory system, that part of the blood or the plasma leaves the capillaries and go to the cells loaded with oxygen. This oxygen will go into the cells. The mitochondria will use it to burn nutrients. This is called internal respiration because oxygen go to the cells, move to the cells, and carbon dioxide leave. Oxygen move to the cells, go to the mitochondria. Mitochondria use it to burn nutrients, release carbon dioxide that leaves. So you take oxygen in exchange of carbon dioxide at the cell's level, another exchange. So we call that internal exchange or internal respiration. So you do need to know the difference between those two types. We do the exchange twice, not only the one that we all know. We know that we get oxygen in and get rid of carbon dioxide. There is an exchange here. Oxygen in exchange of carbon dioxide in the lung. Yes, we all know that. But this is not the only exchange. The other one is at the cellular level for oxygen to go to the mitochondria and produce carbon dioxide. And here is the mitochondria in which the internal respiration occurred. The air contains different gases. The most abundant or the major is nitrogen. You might think it's oxygen. It is not oxygen. The major bulk of the air out here in the atmosphere is actually nitrogen. This is the largest proportion. You don't have to know like all these numbers. This is too much, but just know that the major part, the big bulk is nitrogen, followed by oxygen and just a little bit of carbon dioxide. What's most important? Nitrogen, the big part, followed by oxygen and a little bit of carbon dioxide. The air, the atmospheric pressure, the pressure of the air in the atmosphere is about 760 millimeter mercury. You don't have to remember the name, but know that the air pressure in the atmosphere is called atmospheric pressure, while the pressure inside our lung is called the pulmonary pressure. To make it simple, when you inhale or inspirate, meaning the air moves in, you're going to contract your muscles like this, like intercostal muscles, move the ribs so that the lungs or the chest space become bigger. Also, the diaphragm push down, flatten, and move down. Both of those together will make the space here larger. And when you make the space larger, the pressure inside the lungs will drop so that the air moves in. The opposite of that is when you breathe out, lung, the diaphragm relax, so it goes back up. The intercostal muscles relax, so the chest becomes smaller. And when the chest becomes smaller, the pressure inside increase. When it is higher than the atmospheric pressure, air moves out. So inhale, pressure drops, air moves in. When it is under the atmospheric, exhale, relax, both diaphragm and intercostal muscles. The chest cavity becomes smaller, pressure increase. When it is higher than the atmospheric, it moves out. This is exactly the same idea of the air pump. If you use the air pump to inflate your bike or something, like when you do like pull it up like this, the air moves in it because you're making the space bigger. And then when you push it down, the air moves out and go to the tube because you're making the space smaller. So here it is, inspiration and expiration, or inhalation, exhalation. Um, what help us to get all this oxygen and get rid of all of this carbon dioxide? It's huge amount. How can we get all of this, and how can we accomplish all this exchange in, like, it takes like 3 seconds to do this. This is like 3 seconds, maybe 4 seconds. How can we get all the oxygen that we need and carbon dioxide that we need to get rid of in these 3, 4 seconds? Because the surface area of our alveoli is huge, is way bigger than you expect. It just crowded together. So if you look at it like this, if I ask you, like, look at this, what do you think about the surface area of these alveoli? You will say it's something like this, like a ball, or like maybe a chair, like maximum. No, it's a lot bigger than that. It's just because it's folded, 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 folded. So I give you that false impression. Uh, we have about 600 million alveoli. This is how huge it is. So the surface area is huge. If, of course, we can't do that, but if you unfold and spread all these walls of the alveoli and put it together, it will look like this, a tennis court. This is how huge it is. Obviously, in the blood, oxygen, and we talked about that in the blood, oxygen attached to the hemoglobin part of the red blood cells. Now we call it oxyhemoglobin. Which part of the hemoglobin specifically? The iron of the heme specifically. And this will take it to the cells, release it. The cells will take that oxygen and use it. So which respiration is inside the cell mitochondria? Obviously, this is internal. Which one is the respiration, getting the oxygen from the air all the way, crossing lung, in the blood until it reaches the cells? This is the external one. Gas exchange in the respiratory system depend on the partial pressure that we talked about. Like, what's the pressure of the oxygen outside and inside? The air contains carbon dioxide, oxygen, and nitrogen. But which one is the most abundant? Abundant means plenty, a lot. Of course, it is nitrogen. What is in the red blood cells? Obviously, it is hemoglobin, and this is what binds or attached to oxygen. So here is everything: internal respiration, external respiration, very important definitions. partial pressure. There is the pressure of oxygen outside and pressure of oxygen inside. The pressure of oxygen in the air, we call that partial pressure because oxygen is part of the air. So its pressure is called partial pressure. Same thing for carbon dioxide and nitrogen. Um, Now, when we breathe in, again, it's called inspiration or inhalation when the chest cavity increase, and we breathe out, the chest cavity decrease, increasing the pressure, and air is pushed out. Here it is. And what are you using? And you have to remember this. It's the intercostal muscles in between the ribs, contract, moving the ribs to make your chest wall bigger, larger. Same thing for the diaphragm. It moves out. I'm sorry, it moves down, making the diaphragm flat, also increasing uh, the volume or the size of the chest. Um, Here are the muscles that I talked about. This is the diaphragm, and this is the external intercostal muscles. Let me say this. When I inhale, am I contracting my muscles? Of course, I do. Like, if you look at it, your muscles in between the ribs, intercostal muscles, and the diaphragm contract. Is this is an active process or passive process? Your muscles contract. Obviously, it's active. You're doing activity, muscular contraction. So inspiration is active anyway. Normal inspiration. Look, my muscles contract, which you're doing activity. But look at the normal expiration and try it. Look at this. Just let it go. You're not making effort. You make effort. I'm talking about normal breathing. I'm not assuming, I will talk about it. I'm not assuming that you are exercising or on a treadmill or stuff like that. I'm talking about normal, quiet breathing. Right now, you're sitting down, try it. Breathe in, which is called inspiration or inhalation. Your muscles are contracting. This is active because muscles are contracting. Look at the exhalation, the opposite. Just let it go. I'm not doing any activity. So this is passive. But there is another scenario that if you are exercising these muscles, external intercostal and diaphragm, will not be enough. And I'm going to need extra muscles to help me. And these muscles, like if you do like, now there are other muscles that are added up to help you. And these muscles are called sternocleidomastoid. And this muscle here is called pectoralis minor, because there is another one that's called major outside, but it's not used. This one will be pulling out the ribs. These are additional muscles only in maximal expiration, inspiration, I mean. What do you mean by maximal inspiration? Like the maximum that you can breathe if you are exercising. You're going to use two additional muscles in the green circle here. Pectoralis major, this elevate the reps, and sternocleidomastoid, which elevate the sternum, and it will move the chest up, increasing it. Sternocleidomastoid is this muscle right here in the side of your neck, if you can see me here. Excuse me. So this is normal inspiration versus maximal expiration. In the maximal expiration, all what I want you to know is this picture is good enough. We're not going to show you this picture maybe in the next class, but in this class, I just want you to know that during normal in inspiration, inhale, it is the diaphragm and external intercostal. Diaphragm moves down to become flat, and external intercostal pull the ribs up. And when you pull the ribs up, the the volume or the size will increase. Adding to those, still we're going to use those. But if you're doing maximal expiration, like you are exercising or something, you're going to use pectoralis minor that also elevate the reps just to help the external intercostal, and the sternocleidomastoid elevating this sternum, this collarbone right here. Expiration, on the other hand, normal expiration is passive. Just let it go. You're not doing effort. It's quiet. It's passive. And the reason of that is inside the lung, there is something called elastic recoil, like this. When I get a rubber band and stretch it, you're making effort. If you let it go, it will go back without effort. This going back is recoil because it's elastic. So our lung is something closer to that. You stretch it, you make effort, and then let it go, you don't make effort. Can I make effort in inspiration? Not the normal, quiet inspiration. Not this. This is passive. Because of, again, because of the elastic recoil and also the abdominal organs push on the diaphragm up. So this is happening passively. But if you have to both inhale and exhale maximum, like with power, like if you're exercising, both of those now become active because you go like, you're using muscles in both of them. This is not the normal, not the quiet, not the resting. No, this is an exception. If you're exercising now, other muscles are going to help you, like the abdominal muscles, the muscles surrounding the abdomen. The abdominal organ will push even more, and now the internal intercostal muscles will push inward. So again, the normal expiration is passive. The maximum expiration is forced. And the muscles here are abdominal muscles and the internal intercostal. Now the lung volumes. If any one of you guys, or if you see like a family member or a friend or something going to the doctor because of an issue in his lung, and they make him like breathe in this tube and this machine, uh, they will tell them, I just need to know the volumes inside your lung to see if you have an issue. So they ask them like this: breathe in and out normally. This volume is measured, and we call that tidal volume. This is very important part. I showed you the picture and I told you it's extremely important. This is also very important. The volumes are very important. And understand it. Tidal volume, what is this? Just a normal breath, in and out. About half a liter, like this. Half a liter in, half a liter out. This is normal. And the reason why they call it tidal volume, because you know the tides goes like up, down, up, down, up, down. So you breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. So this is the normal, that's called tidal volume. Quietly, you take like this. This is called tidal volume. Is that the maximum that we can do? No. And instead of doing this, I can go like, here is again, tidal volume. But can I do this? Like, can I go above that? You can. The part that's above that is our reserve. You can use it if you need to. So we call it inspiratory reserve volume. The volume that's reserved for extra inspiration. How about this? Look at this again, tidal volume. Half in, half out. Half liter in, half liter out. Is this is a maximum for inspiration? I said, no, I can use my reserve for inspiration. There is a reserve for expiration as well. So I can go like this. I can go even more. So this is reserved for expiration, extra expiration. We call it expiratory reserve volume. So I give you 3 volumes so far. If you add the 3 volumes together, we call that vital capacity. So the volume is one individual of those that I talked about. Tidal volume. Above that, inspiratory reserve volume. Under that, expiratory reserve volume. Now, when you say capacity, you're talking about multiple volumes. If you put together the 3 volumes, this is called vital capacity. The capacity that is vital for you if you need it, the whole capacity, all these. Now, I will add one more volume. If I do my maximum inspiration and expiration, like I'm doing heavy exercise, I will go not like this. No, I will do like, and then I did my maximum now. The question is, did my lung collapse? Is it completely empty? No. There is still a space in the lung. Otherwise, if it collapses, we will die. It doesn't, we don't die. When you breathe like this, even if you do the maximal expiration, still there is a residual volume remaining that will never leave the lung. This volume is called residual volume. If you put all 4 volumes together, this is called total lung capacity. So I hope you guys understand this. If there is something that you don't understand, you should let me know. But otherwise, this is very important as well. So we talked about different parts of the respiratory system and the function of each one of those. And we also talked about volumes and capacities. This is important to know. And here are the definitions. Tidal volume is normal breath in and out, about half a liter or 2 cups. Inspiratory reserve volume, this is the extra air that you can use when you inspirate more, above the tidal volume. Expiratory reserve volume, this is a volume reserved for extra expiration, when you exhale forcibly. Vital capacity is maximal inspiration from maximal expiration to maximal exhalation. So when they do this, the doctor, when you go to them and they will tell you, and they have to know every one of those. So they tell you breathe in and out normally in a tube. This is tidal volume, and they will tell you, I want you to breathe in normal and don't breathe out. Instead, breathe in more to the maximum. Now he's getting the inspiratory reserve volume. And if you add those two together, if you add those two and the expiratory as well, this is called vital capacity. How do you know vital capacity? They will tell you, I want you to breathe in and out, just normal. Now I want you to breathe in normal and then don't breathe out. Inhale to the maximum that you can. You go like, and then it will tell you, now I want you to exhale the maximum. This whole thing here, tidal volume, plus the inspiratory above it, plus the expiratory underneath, this is called vital capacity. What remains in the lung after maximal expiration is called residual volume. You're not going to lose it because your lungs are not collapsing. So here is a respiratory cycle. What's the respiratory cycle? It's moving in and out, inspiration and expiration, or inhalation and exhalation. Those two stay same or change, inhalation and exhalation. Of course, the volume change because the volume increase the volume decrease. Lung volume change after alter the pressure gradient. And this is what allow oxygen to move in and carbon dioxide to move out. It's a pressure gradient between the lung and the outside air. What else beside the diaphragm and external intercostal used in maximal inspiration? Pectoralis minor, it's in the picture, plus sternocleidomastoid. This is basically the picture that have this muscle here in the side of your neck, side and front of your neck. Normal expiration is active or passive. Expiration, of course, it is passive. Just let it go. Forced is active. So again, this is the same thing that we just talked about it. And you need to know all these four volumes and the two capacities. Now, what is controlling our respiration? Of course, our nervous system control everything. So what tells your chest to inhale and exhale? Even if you're sleeping, you still breathe in and out. Nervous system. The nervous system is the one that give you a signal, breathe in and out, breathe in and out. So it's part of your brain stem inside your brain that will give you that normal rhythm. What's a normal rhythm? You can count it. You can get your watch like this and put your hand on your chest and count. The average will be somewhere between 12 and 15 in adults. For your information, children and babies breathe faster, just to let you know. So if you have a kid or something and you put your hand like here on their chest and measure, you will find it different according to the age. It can be 20, it can be even in infants, it can be like 25, maybe 30, and then it go like 20, and then when they get older, like 18, until they are adults, and it goes to this number between 12 and 15. Now, where is the pacemaker that control this? It's located in medulla oblongata, this part of the brain stem right here, this part of the brain stem, medulla oblongata. This is where the pacemaker for respiration, which is the one that decides how many times you breathe per minute. And these are called respiratory centers. Look, it's in the medulla here, which is part of the brain stem. And it reach out to these muscles to contract and relax through these nerves. It's called the phrenic nerves, and it is different nerves, but I don't want to go through the details. Just remember that the respiratory centers, which make the rhythm or the pacemaker, is located here in the brain. Which part? Medulla oblongata, which is part of the brainstem. The nerves are going to take the signal to the muscles to contract and relax. You breathe in and out. Now, why sometimes we breathe faster and sometimes we breathe less? It's because of receptors that we have inside our arteries and also inside our brain. There are receptors. We call those chemoreceptors. Why did you call it chemoreceptors? Because these receptors respond to chemistry change. What do you mean by chemistry change? I mean change in the chemistry of the blood, like how much oxygen, this is chemistry. How much carbon dioxide, this is chemistry. Because of the carbon dioxide change, the pH will change, which is the acidity. This is also chemistry. So these chemoreceptors are located in two spots to give to get the signal and to give the measurement and give it to the brain, to the respiratory centers. So if oxygen goes down and carbon dioxide goes up, so the acidity increase. If that's the case, it means you need to work harder to get rid of that carbon dioxide. So that will send the signal to the brain, and the brain will tell your chest and your lungs to breathe more. Same thing in the cerebrospinal fluid in the brain. We also have receptors similar to those. So where are these chemoreceptors located? Some of them are located right here and right here in the aorta and in the carotid. What's a carotid? Carotid is this. If you put your finger in the side of your neck right here between your Adam's apple or your larynx and between the muscle here, you will feel it. This is called carotid. It's located here and here as well. Chemoreceptors. Chemo, why? Because they detect chemical changes. What the chemical changes? Most importantly, carbon dioxide, but also oxygen and pH. It detected and sent the signal, as you see here, send the signal to the respiratory system in the brainstem. So when you do activities more or less, the breathing will increase or decrease according to the level of the activities. So if you're running or using the treadmill or exercising or whatever, obviously you will need more oxygen and you will need to get rid of more carbon dioxide. So you need to breathe faster. So here it is. If you work more, you produce more carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide goes up. You're using more oxygen. Oxygen goes down. When carbon dioxide moves up, acidity increase, which is pH decrease. Chemoreceptors will detect it, send the signal to the brain stem specifically, respiratory center in the medulla, and this will send the signal to the muscles, diaphragm and intercostal muscles, to work more. Um, Beside the breathing, there are two reflexes that I want you to know, um, like coughing and sneezing. These are reflexes. If something irritates your lung, whatever that something is, like you can cough because you're sick, but you can also cough because there is dust or anything. It's basically irritation of your lung. You're going to cough. Um, and also, when you swallow, remember that epiglottis that I want you to remember that name, that gate. It goes like this. This is the larynx, and this is on top of it. It close it if you're eating, and open if you're breathing. So what happened when we swallow? Swallow means food and drink. Epiglottis close. You can hold your breath until 2 or 3 minutes, and then you have to breathe, or otherwise this person will die because carbon dioxide will build up and oxygen will drop. When the carbon dioxide build up, it's change the blood into acidic, and oxygen drops so that you cannot do the internal respiration, no energy, death. Where are the respiratory centers? Brainstem. Which part of the brainstem? Medulla oblongata. What are the centers that detect chemical changes, specifically carbon dioxide? Chemoreceptors. Where are the chemoreceptors? Some of them are in the carotid and aortic, and some of them are in the brain. And this will contribute into what? Homeostasis of respiration. Homeostasis of, what's a homeostasis? This is what we've been talking about since we started the course. Homeostasis, keeping everything within normal range and normal function. Normal range, normal function. So this will control homeostasis. And that's it. The rest is the summary of what we already talked about. And look, it even contains this picture again. Okay. So I am going to stop and